Hey, this is Jeff. Welcome to the roundtable. We have an amazing show scheduled for you guys tonight. Obviously, you guys are here on the chain. Obviously, you guys are here with our co-host, Chip, as well. And right below us, we have our guest of the evening. This is Jeremy Kauffman of LBRY, which is LBRY. I had to get that plug in there, LBRY. We're going to talk all about this platform, decentralized streaming video platform. Super excited to have you here, Jeremy. What's going on? How are you tonight?
I'm doing great. LBRY has been doing amazing, and I'm excited to be talking to you about it, Jeff and Chip.
Oh, that's outstanding. And so, you know what, guys, we're getting ready to start the whole show right about now.
And now, Off the Block with Jeff and Chip on the chain.
All right, we got the Off the Block open. That's all right. We're airing Off the Block on the roundtable. Our Off the Block segment is normally our CEO interview, but we decided that we're going to be airing this on Sunday to get this out there right away. So roundtable Off the Block. We're really excited to have you here with us tonight, Jeremy. Lots of great things in this space. We're loving the decentralized space. We're not so much liking the censorship that we're seeing on other platforms like YouTube. So you know what I'd love to hear about, kind of to get started. How did you even get into the blockchain space?
Yeah, it's outrageous, some of the stuff that's been going on with YouTube. But in terms of when I got into the blockchain space, probably going on about 6 years, and started getting into it as someone, whose sort of interest was piqued actually more certainly by the implications of the technology, but also just like the technology itself. I'm a computer scientist. I had a programming and technical background, and this might sound sure how to turn everyone off right away, but like when someone told me you could reach consensus on state and we didn't need to trust a single party, I was like, whoa, that's pretty cool. And then you dig into how it works and you learn it's this like really like elegant kind of clever approach to solving this problem. And then I couldn't stop thinking about what else you might be able to do with this. And that eventually led me to being a founder of LBRY.
That's amazing. That's really, really cool. So when you're getting to that point, and you're kind of ramping up. When you were thinking about LBRY though, and competing against one of the biggest platforms known to man, which is Google and YouTube, I mean, was there like this light bulb moment that said, not only do you want to get in a blockchain, but you want to take on this behemoth, Google, and say, you know what, we could probably do it better than YouTube's doing it?
Yeah, well, I'm an honest guy, so I'll be honest with you. That's not actually what I was thinking when I started LBRY. So it was really easy to make that choice that I ended up making of deciding to compete with YouTube. No, I mean, that's not entirely true, because I knew that I was stepping into the digital content space. And so I knew, but when I was actually building this, when we were starting it, we saw it partially as a YouTube competitor, but also just like as much a competitor, and still think we are ultimately, with things like Amazon, in terms of Amazon's distribution of digital content. Because in some ways, like what's going on with YouTube is really messed up, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in more detail. But what's going on Amazon is also kind of messed up. Like if you want to sell a $10 book, which is like a 10 megabyte file, which is very easy to move around, you're giving $3 to Amazon. What's going on with that, right? Like I can sell a physical good and lose way less of a margin. How is it that in digital content land we see higher margins when we should actually be seeing better and richer competition? And so the original idea of the company was actually saying, can we protocolize? Can we build this Web 3.0 version of digital content distribution? Can we create a marketplace? And we actually didn't see it as much. We didn't even see it as much as like of a sort of like social and topical, like topic of the day We saw it actually as more of like an evergreen, longer tail thing at first, and we actually think it still will grow into being more of that. But we started getting all this traction as we promoted. We saw YouTubers having this problem, and then when you're an entrepreneur and you're creating a business and you're succeeding in a way, you double down. Hey, let's go after more YouTubers. Oh, YouTubers really need this. Oh, okay, I guess we're competing with YouTube now, and we focused on that a lot more than we did on day one.
So Chip, they dove straight into the shallow end.
Yeah, head first in the shallow end, which is
head first in the shallow end.
Head first into the shallow end.
Yeah, look, we tweeted the other day that like our best marketing right now is literally just like repeating what YouTube says. Like the messages that we get that get the best engagement when we put them out on social media is literally just repeating things that YouTube actually said. Like, how wild is that? That like your best marketing is just, you don't have to do anything. You just say what they did.
It's amazing. I mean, it really is. I mean,
I'll just say from a content creator's standpoint, the one thing, it's like when you're in blockchain, right, and you're plugged into digital assets, but it's not just the digital assets, it's what the blockchain, the transparency, but really the fact that you can't get demonetized, you cannot get deplatformed, like that to us is something really important, because one of the things we talk a lot about on this channel, we just did a show on it last night about censorship, and that usually gets demonetized over on YouTube, and usually sometimes it gets some kind of a strike against it. So I guess my question to you is like, where, now that you've headed down this path, where do you see yourselves going? Because you're starting to attract all the big things that are going on out there with these other content creators like London Reels of the world, Dr. Petard, everyone's getting banned. And now there's really a home, because everyone goes, well, where are we going to go? Well, LBRY is the perfect place to go. Tell me where I'm, what's up with that?
Yeah, so I want to be clear that it's not. So there is one concern that we have. We don't want to become a place where it's just I don't want to use too negative of a term, but there's some of this stuff is a little bit on the outside. Okay, let's say it that way.
Sure.
And everyone needs this technology, right? It's not just. Like, yes, some of these people are suffering more than others. And I think it's clear. One thing in particular that I think is like very unfair is I think that YouTube is not essentially even really attempting to be an umpire. I think that, or they are pretty influenced by some cultural and political things that make them biased against certain types of content and against others. I think that's unfair. But look, it's the same idea of like, do you want someone else's hand in your wallet, or do you want your money to be yours, right? If you're into Bitcoin, you're into blockchain, you probably get the difference between like, the ability to have money that's yours versus like someone else controlling your money. If you get that, it's the same idea. Do you want your social media, your content creation identity, do you want it to be yours, or do you want someone else to have control over it? And the core idea of LBRY is that same kind of thing where the keys to your channel and your identity and your publishing ability can be kept how you want to keep them. So when you don't have to surrender the same thing to the company. Everything LBRY does is open and open source. So even if we got taken over by like evil clones or like whatever, some terrible thing happens, like, there's no ability. Our entire business model is like handcuffing ourselves. Like, you can trust us, because our hands are tied behind our back, so we couldn't do anything bad if we wanted to. And so I think it's like inevitable that something with these properties will disrupt the status quo.
Yeah, I think that point alone, the decentralization of our data, of our information, of our money, brings us back to the privacy perspective of the individual rights. The whole reason why this country found its foundation was to escape the persecution, and here we are all these years later coming full circle, and surrounded by persecution everywhere we are, from a social media perspective, a monetary perspective. And social media, I mean, that's your voice. So how is it that these platforms are stepping on your voice? And that's what we like about this decentralized nature of, and obviously there has to be some mechanism. We talk a little bit about self-regulation, meaning the community should self-regulate. So if there's people that are out of control, you don't want the outlandish, and there's a point where community says, look, we don't want, someone preaching violence or someone doing something. And, and it seems like there's a self-regulated mechanism within LBRY, or am I wrong about that?
There is some, and I want to be clear, our intent is to continue to build more, but there are, basic features like blocking and filtering and things like this. And I want to build more, and I actually want to make two things clear. Like, so one, our stance is we're not like pro putting super edgy or offensive or things like this in people's faces that don't want to see them, right? We're about choice. There's some stuff that's gotten deleted or demonetized from YouTube that like I would never want to see in my feed, and that like my experience is better if it never shows up, because some of it, not all of it, some of it is garbage. Okay, a lot of it is very unfair. Okay. But our goal is not to be like, hey, illegal, this too spicy for YouTube. Now everyone see it here. No, like our goal is personal choice. All right. And to me, it's so weird. Basically here, if you agree with this, you're gonna like LBRY. Like it's so weird that Mark Zuckerberg, who is like this evil guy for the last like decade or whatever, right, is now the person that we want to trust on like what's going to be labeled false or not. Like that we want to say that like YouTube it should actually decide whether or not we can see something at all, like not just warnings, but like at all, like scrubbing it, and if you think we shouldn't trust them to decide whether it should be seen at all, then you're going to be the kind of person who likes LBRY. Our intent is not to put this stuff front and center because there's something about it that's provocative, considered dangerous.
But you don't want to poke the hornet's nest either. I mean, there's one thing to live around it, and another thing to parade around and start putting a stick in their eye.
Yeah, like it'll be welcome. And look, I don't know anyone's stance on this call. I'll say one, because like, look, I don't think YouTube deleting the Plandemic video like even makes sense. Okay, I think it honestly makes, in terms of the kind of person who believes that video, it honestly makes them believe it more. Okay, because it fits with the narrative.
Yeah.
But I think Plandemic is wrong. Okay, I think it's wrong, and they're deleting it because they think people are going to be misled by it. The thing is that just because people are going to be misled by it doesn't mean that it should be deleted from the internet. I don't think it accomplishes what they want, and I just don't think it's fundamentally right. Rebut it, say why it's wrong, criticize it. You want to put some banner across the top that says like every doctor in America says this is garbage. All right, put that up and back it up, if that's what you want to do. But don't, I don't know.
Your point is don't censor people's opinions, because there's always multiple sides to an equation. So
yeah, it's just really
whether or not you agree or disagree with Plandemic, or I agree or disagree with it, isn't the point of Google saying, well, we're going to now make a decision, and we decide that neither one of you can even view it and have your own choice or opinion on the matter. So I get that, where your stance is on that. And I think that's important. Don't allow YouTube or Facebook or Twitter to censor information, because that's really what it is. It's more information for us to make properly educated decisions.
Yeah, it's really offensive, and I'll also say it has a like very pro establishment bias that I really don't share. Like, who else lies all the time? Politicians lie all the time.
No.
Yeah.
No, not the politicians.
For some reason, those lies are left up, right? But
I was going to say that think about what centralized planning is, right? If you centralize anything, you've got a small group of elite people get to choose winners and losers. We are going to select the thought that everyone, if you share the group thing, then we're going to share that. And that's the whole thing that appeals to us about decentralization is let's assume that the humans on the planet are at least smart enough to make their own decisions. Forget about other planets. Let's just focus on Earth. They're smart enough, or they're educated enough to kind of choose for themselves. And that's really the whole idea of decentralization, is that you don't have a group of people that are choosing winners and losers. You are the winners over here and the losers over there. Am I right about that? Or
yeah, I would echo that 100%. It's not actually always the language that I put it in, because I don't know how it's going to go down. But given that I agree with that 100%. The one small thing that I would also make clear is like I believe people should have the right, but part of that right is to opt out. Like, look, if you're someone who's say, I can tell everyone, here and presumably your audience, pretty intelligent people to be able to follow this conversation. If you're someone who is like average or even below average intelligence, and you're recognizing that, the rational thing to say is, well, like, look, I'm not going to be able to tell if a scientific argument is true. And you do want to defer to an authority and say, and I'm not even saying that, like, obviously we defer to authorities, right? I defer. I don't know all the science. I'm deferring to different authorities, but I want to at least be able to see what different authorities, are saying. But it can be rational to say, like, look, I want to trust this party to be a provider of quality. The thing is, we just don't want to say there's only going to be one party, right? That's the thing that's scary, and I like, because I could see us bringing systems in where we say, like, basically, like, I trust this other entity to, block things on my behalf. Like, I actually think that's a healthy thing. Because, if I want to say, like, if there's some whatever pro, like, scientific group that I really trust and say, like, they have a good track record of flagging bullshit, that could be, that's a useful feature. It's not about it, but it's about not letting just Silicon Valley and a small group of people make the choices.
So I had a quick your own self, make your own, I like your filtering option. If I don't want to see it, if I don't want to see any political content in my feed, I click no political content. And I think if I don't want sports or whatever, I think it's a nice option.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we have all this. We have some of it. We're still building very actively. That's also something, if you come and get involved with LBRY. And by the way, if you're still on YouTube watching this, great time to just hop on over to this video on LBRY.
That's right, exactly.
And you'll see that you won't use LBRY for longer than like a week or two before you'll see us having made something better. We're working on this project very hard, and not only our core team, but lots of people in the community. Nearly 200 people, something like this, have contributed code in the last year, like 60 in the last month. There's a lot of people working on LBRY, making it better every day.
So I guess that's my question. So when did you roll out LBRY? When was the first time it went live?
So LBRY's been around for actually quite a while, although really it's basically since LBRY.tv launched in November of last year that I would say that things have like really accelerated. We had some other like peaks and things, but until we launched the web version, we weren't seeing more than, and we actually have a blog post on this. It's maybe a month or two old, called Progress at LBRY, that kind of tells the story of this for someone who wants a deeper version of it. But the LBRY blockchain is almost 4 years old. It started as like a couple of people hacking. We did no ICO. We did raise some VC funds. We have raised some money from selling the token on the market. But with our desktop app, we had a desktop app that was getting used by maybe like low tens of thousands prior to launch. So we had a community of people who were into what we were building, and we had accumulated a good amount of content from working with YouTubers who were concerned about their content going away or having problems. But once we launched the web version in November, things accelerated to the point that we had more than 2 million people use it in April.
That's amazing. One of the points to bring up, and I think it really differentiates the way you've rolled out this platform to make it, I would say, easier on the content creator, is that initial engagement of, I remember when we set it up, and we've been on LBRY for a little while now, but I remember setting it up, it's like, oh, you can migrate all of your YouTube content over here. I'm like, holy cow. And I remember Chip and I talking about, I'm like, can you believe us? When I click this button, all of our videos are going to be, not just the videos, the thumbnails, the descriptions, the title, everything. And it's still going. And it's so impressive because, as a content creator with limited time, here we are uploading videos, doing live, doing all this stuff, and know that it's automatically migrating over there. And at this point, we're kind of in one mode. And then as we get ready to make, and move our focus over, I love seeing the migration, and it's just boom, there it is. It's on LBRY.
Yeah. Well, it's great. It's great to hear you're enjoying that feature. That's LBRY.com/YouTube for anyone out there with a channel who wants to join it themselves. And yeah, look, it's my job to talk about how great we are. So I'm just going to do a little bit. Something that I think we're doing well as a blockchain company, better than like a lot of blockchain companies. And maybe it's because this team had, a decent amount of like effectively like consumer SaaS experience before this, we focus on building, like you have to come up with things that work. I feel like there's a lot of focus on like the tech, and like, not that our tech is bad, but something like building a utility that lets a YouTube person, sync their channel, like that's not part of the protocol. Like that's something we built as to make it successful so that we could give people this good, effectively this heads I win, tails nothing happens choice, which is the kind of bet that everyone likes, right? So, and not just that, but in other areas like the user, and look, we have a long way to go. It's not perfect, but like user experience, how easy it is to get started. We don't even lead with blockchain. Like you'll struggle to find the word blockchain on our site. You learn you're on a blockchain when it matters. When something takes 2 minutes that should have taken 3 seconds somewhere else. Okay, hey, sorry, that's the blockchain. But otherwise, we actually don't focus on on blockchain as this kind of intrinsically good thing. It lets us solve a problem, this problem of decentralized control.
Exactly. If I could, Jeremy, if I could just show my screen, I wanted to show the on the chain site over there, just so people get an idea of what it's like. I mean, obviously going to see the link down below, but let me go ahead and share the screen. Let me see if I get the right one here. It's going to be this one. Bam. There we go. Okay, so we're looking at right now, and I'm not logged in or anything. It's just like go to user. First time you come to the page, you would see now, and I'll kind of go through some of the things that I really like. First of all, it's super clean. The design of it is so it's whoever designed this has done a really amazing job. And I'll click on this video here that just did the other night. There I am going off and doing my thing. But here's what it's looked great. Look how clean this is. The fact is the description always shows up, which I love because we put a lot of important links in there. There's the LBC, which we'll get into a little bit, but I wanted just to show this to people so they can kind of see what this looks like and how easy it is. And again, if you start looking around, let's say you're watching the video and you're just browsing around, love this. Look, the video is going to continue to play. It's not playing now because I put it on pause, but it's a very well done, clean interface. It's what you would expect with in any kind of a quality product. So that was the one thing that Jeff and I were like, this is so easy, and as a creator, just jumping in here and looking at this was just too easy. Tell us a little bit about LBC. What is LBC?
Yeah, well, thank you, and that means a lot to me personally. Actually, this is this area of the company I probably obsess about as much as anything else, because to me, this is what matters. Like, I know to some extent I'm like supposed to be, people want me to go around, and talk about like the blockchain and the token, but the stuff that you're talking about is actually like what I'm passionate about, right? Like that's nice. I want a blockchain to enable things that are just really like nice and work well, so yeah. But I will talk about LBC and the blockchain. So a blockchain powers the entire thing. In terms of how the tech works specifically, the blockchain is basically the catalog of what's on the network. If your audience is familiar with other decentralized tech, like say a BitTorrent, that technology lacked things like identity, it lacked payments, and it lacked decentralized discovery. So we use the blockchain to solve all of that. The content itself is still on a peer-to-peer network, so the content is not on the blockchain. But the blockchain token is used. It's used to publish. It's used to pay for content. It's used to tip creators. And there's also an aspect of staking that gets into how basically discovery works, and we can get into more detail if you're interested.
That's interesting.
I think we should get into some more detail, because that was one of the things you brought up early, because one of the things you talk about on your homepage is taking on the Amazon and YouTube, in other words, as far from somebody who's creating any kind of content, right? The fact that you take back your content, because we all know that YouTube takes 30%, and we know that there's tiers, because I know that my wife has a store on Amazon. Look, they're always reaching in your pocket for something. There's this thing, and you got to pay for this thing. Then there's this monthly fee, right? So how would it work for somebody just wanting to put a video up there or creating a channel on LBRY?
So the minimums, if you just want to do it, it's very cheap. Okay. So, one LBC, which is, I think, something like 4 to 5 cents right now. Well, first of all, we'll just give it to you for free if you want to like do basic things like give us your email address, right? So already you don't have to spend anything. But if you want to buy them, one LBC is going to get you dozens, probably like 100 publishes. So we're not talking about very much money. You would, but what you can do is put more on it if you either want to get like effectively like a really good permanent name with no additional characters. I'll explain this. That's a bad introduction to it. So you have, when you claim a name, think about it like Discord or a lot of video games do this. other naming systems where like names aren't unique. So you'll have your handle plus like hashtag A, or something like this, right? And so we do the same thing. So two people want to come on and be on the chain. Two people could get on the chain, and you would be on the chain A, and someone else would be on the chain Z. Well, no, it's hashes, so it's a text decimal. So like on the chain F, and someone else would be on the chain 1 and 7, and so on. On the chain itself, with none of those, we allow the community to vote on it through this sort of like staking mechanism with the tokens. And so that's how if someone wants to look up on the chain and provides, no other additional identifier, they're going to get the one that's sort of decided by that community consensus. And by default, tips and other things come in as part of that stake. So even without people explicitly doing it, the one that's the most popular should kind of end up winning. And so that's a sort of hard way that the token is used in staking. And so when I say a hard way, I mean that's part of the protocol, and that's like defined. There's another way it's used that's sort of softer but still important, and that's in some of our trending algorithms and our search algorithms. So these algorithms are continually evolving, but the amount that's staked ends up being an input to quality and to trust, right? Because you can imagine that the content that's been tipped 1,000 times, like generally is more interesting than the content that's been tipped one time if they compare the same in every other metric. So it also ends up being, and I don't know, I can't tell you specifically off the top of my head, it ends up being like a factor when someone is performing a search is how much is staked.
That's interesting. So then, I mean, there's so much that's built on community engagement, right? So, so it's, I'm really interested to find out, kind of segueing a little bit, but understanding what the community engagement currently looks like. You mentioned there's how many active users do you see per month, per day, per week? I mean, what is that engagement look like?
With our user figures, we're just considering that like anyone who's coming on and watching a video. So I want to be, because I'm pretty, we're very open and transparent company. So these are people who are watching videos. They aren't all necessarily wallet holders. They aren't all necessarily like operating on the blockchain.
Right.
But any given day, we're seeing tens of thousands of wallet holders logging in and performing transactions. We're seeing hundreds of thousands to, in a given day, I don't think we've hit 1 million in a day yet, but we have hit, pretty decent hundreds of thousands of figures of people overall coming onto LBRY and checking something out. Tens of thousands of mobile app users, tens of thousands of desktop users, and growing very, 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 very rapidly. We've been growing like 15%-ish week over week for like 6 months, 7 months.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I have an important question.
Yeah.
It's really important. I'm an iOS guy, right? So I'm that guy. So it's like that's the thing I'm waiting for. Jeff's an Android guy, so he was able to download the app and use it right away. Now, I'm not so lucky.
Jeff could maybe tell you that the experience of that was maybe okay, but not great. I don't know how Jeff felt about it. We're very excited that we have an Android app and it does work. It has had some performance issues. And so we originally expected iOS to come out sooner. We basically reprioritized some things because it didn't make sense to sort of double down on something that wasn't working. We just released a rewritten Android app. It's in early testing, but anyone in the Android store can opt in. Of course, we always offer nice tips for feedback and things like that. And so this one is much more performant. And assuming this works, we will most likely resume the iOS project. But right now, it's going to be mid to late Q3 probably at the earliest.
There you go. You got to wait.
Fair enough. It's fair enough. I can wait.
Yeah,
it's not going to be that long.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah. Let's hope that. Let's hope that. Don't hold me to that.
All right, man. I'm gonna hold it to you, Jeremy. I'm gonna
Q3.
Q3.
The one thing I noticed with the app is that it continues to run in the background. What's the purpose of having it run in the background after you kind of close the app?
Yeah, so this is also something that we're concerned. Yeah, this is one of these decentralization trade-offs And we're considering making the app essentially a little bit more like LBRY.tv and making the desktop client. But basically, it's to help you continuing to participate in the network. With the new version, actually, we may have. So one of the reasons that we were doing it was every time you started it, you needed to catch up with blockchain data, and it was resulting in these like really slow start times. That problem might be solved in the new version. I'll have to check if it's still running in the background in the new version. But the answer was basically for purposes of a mix of, I think, participating in the network and having startup times that were reasonable.
Yeah, and what's really cool about the app is that you can select to be able to listen to your videos while you shut your phone down. So YouTube, unless you have YouTube Premium and you're paying the, I don't know, what is it now, $9.99 a month or whatever they're charging you on LBRY, you just flip that switch and you're on the go listening to your video, and that's a big difference.
Yeah, completely, absolutely, and it's so done. And that's a great example of why it seems like this small thing. But it's actually, like, if you think about it a little bit, I actually think it's kind of really offensive, which is like, right. It used to work, right? It used to be a free feature. So like at one point in time, like it was economical for YouTube. Like they'd already made the app and it already let you go in the background. And it's not like you didn't watch the ad, right? Like you watched the ads. So whatever money they're making is the same as they're making on desktop, right? You're watching the ad. So they said, but that's not enough. We're going to make our product worse, right? Like someone has to go in and remove a working feature because we're not making like enough money. And it's not like they made other changes to desktop, right? It wasn't like, oh, there's some revenue we're losing out on mobile, that we're getting on desktop, and like to be fair or something like this. It's just like, no, we've got you. You're captured, and now we're going to squeeze. And it's like, this is what all of these companies do. And the reason that it's like we just, as humans, it's almost like with software, we'll end up just seeing this pattern like happen repeatedly of hopping. But if we hop onto the solution that's like actually open, I don't know, maybe the game ends. I don't know. We'll see.
You saw that YouTube announced for the first time in its history the revenues, I think it was 2019, was $15 billion, right? That's 30% of their take, plus a lot of other things. But I mean, you get so annoyed, you want to just like, okay, I'll buy your monthly fee because I just don't want to be hassled, because if you listen to podcasts, you listen to any other thing, you can just leave them, and go on your way. Because a lot of times mobile, let's face it, you'd like to be sitting there looking at your phone, but chances are you just want the most important part is the dialogues and what's happening, what people are speaking, right?
Yeah. No, and it's like, it's just, and asking like what, $10 a month to be able to like,
it's too much. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But no matter what they do, and that's one of the things, again, we like. That's why we started a website. That's why we're on thechain.io, because we're building around a platform. We want to have a platform. Now, we're not doing anything crazy. I mean, we're talking about blockchain. Every once in a while, we do get into more or less like maybe some controversial topics. Controversial in the sense that it's for some people, right? We talk about freedoms and erosion of freedom and all this kind of stuff, which isn't necessarily. I don't think it's too, but every once in a while, one of our videos gets demonetized. It's just such a little thing. I mean, we're not going out there going, crazy accusations or weird stuff. Like, I understand we're not trying to attract the crazies here, but with that being said, look, just in your normal course of travels, like, what are you doing that would cause anybody to just have any issue with it, right? I mean, it's an opinion. It's one person's opinion. I always preface it with like, hey, this is just my opinion. I'm not saying it's right. Just my opinion.
I think so. One of the better points of example to me is in terms of what's happened inside of Google is like what happened with James Damore. And I'm in no way passing no opinion whatsoever on like anything that was like said or any opinion expressed or any evidence represented. Like that was an attempt to have like a calm, factual discussion, right? Like that was the intent. And that was too much. Because it's clear that there are like certain things, like, and to me, I don't know, that's just so alien to my way of thinking. Like you answer like factual claims with facts. Like, the whole idea of like, ripping someone's tongue out, you make people think you're scared of what they're going to say. It's like, I don't know how else to read it. That's how I end up reading it. Like if they think that is supposed to make me like more likely to think that he's lying or something. Like, you know, I haven't gone through it all, but that's not on that surface level of like, that's not the reaction that I have. Like if I skim something and it's like, okay, this is a dude who's like, you know, maybe mildly, I don't want to even say anything. Yeah, you know, he's trying to speak calmly and present something factually, and it's like, really, that's the thing you can't say,
Right.
really? I don't know. It's very. I try to be like an empathetic person and like take other people's perspectives, but that's a hard one for me. It's a hard one.
It's tough, you know, but I think that's a good part about, you know, being open, you know, or at least being willing to listen to other people's opinions. Whereas once you have a platform that censors you and shuts you down, you don't even have that opportunity, you know. And so it's nice to have this open dialogue like that. Let me ask you a question. You mentioned new features, and you have all these programmers that are helping out with new features. What about, I thought I saw an email come out talking about paid content. What's that all about?
Yeah, well, so paid content has always been part of the protocol. It was something we emphasized more because especially as you go back to the launch, it was presented much more as like the place to come and sell your, you know, audiobook, you know, right? As to we're becoming the free YouTube content. Right. And so when we went to launch LBRY TV, we were like, all right, we need to get this web version out, and we cut features to get the web version out. One of them was paid content, because we then had to figure out how that was going to work in the web version, and it was a whole, you know, bunch of stuff. And so we said, okay, let's shelve that. Let's get it working free, because if you can launch faster, you launch faster. Right. And so that's what we did. And so then we said, all right, you know, now it's time. It's working. Let's finish that paid content support. And so that's coming next week. It's not too late. This is going up on Sunday. Well, if any creators can still opt in, we have a blog post about it in our channel, but either way, it will now be a feature on LBRY.tv for everyone around the middle of next week. So the middle of the week that this interview is airing. So the middle of this week, I guess. So
that's really cool. So if somebody has, I mean, would it be more movie genre, episode genre, or something like this? Could we put episode like this up in paid content? What is your what is your goal? What is your
anything up? You know, we want LBRY to be, you know, the original idea was this, and it's still not that far away from me. I mean, look, it's called LBRY, LBRY. Like, we want it to be a very inclusive thing in terms of what you can find. And so that's everything from like music and ebooks and videos to written form stuff. We've really focused on the video, and we will continue to focus on the video, but you'll already see a decent amount of other types on there. Things like text and images and audio all work pretty well already. But we even see people distribute their CAD files over LBRY, people who make these like 3D models.
I never thought about that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, I don't always bring up this case, but since it seems like it's the kind of thing that you and your audience would like, we are the platform of choice for deterrence dispense, which is like the 3D. They make the 3D firearms, right? And so this is a group that's like very concerned about some of the, you know, retaining control. They're unpopular on a lot of platforms. You know, to me, these are engineering files. Like, you know, it doesn't make sense to be attempting to police files. It just, it's completely legal stuff. Yeah. People find it uncomfortable, this idea that you can, you know, 3D print these things. And, you know, they choose to distribute via LBRY, and I'm, you know, my opinion is like more power to them. So.
Awesome. That's fantastic. So what about live streaming?
Yeah, coming, but not unclear when. Yeah. But the protocol can support it. Like, it was designed with that. It's not going to be, I don't know how much work it sounds like to people, but it might not be as much work as it seems. Like, we don't think it's going to be crazy hard to add.
Great. And what are some of the more popular content like on the platform? I know you mentioned a couple of things, but what are some of those genres like? You know, is it crypto's pretty big? Because I see a lot of the people that we follow on LBRY.
So I'll point out LBRYnomics.com, LBRYnomics.com has a bunch of stats around top channels, who's following the most. So, but beyond crypto stuff, I mean, there's some really big content creators. There's some big science creators, you know, Veritasium, 3 Blue 1 Brown, Minute Physics. There's some big, tech and computer channels. A lot of Linux creators. So the network, you can, especially if you, one additional thing you can do is if you're trying to find channels on LBRY, I think we have a view for it if you just hit like discover channels, but you can also just go into the like everything view and filter to channels and sort by like top or trending and find some of the most popular channels. But if you want a straight list of who has the most followers, you can go to LBRYnomics and they have the top list.
There you go.
I was shocked that I typed it in right the first time. That was the most shocking thing that's happened to me today. So, because it's like I usually fumble that up a little bit. I'm in the dark.
Share it up on the screen.
Yeah, let me throw it up there. Let me hope this is it. I mean, this is what I have here. Let's pop it up there.
Different.
Boom. Is this it?
Yep.
Perfect.
So I don't know how it's kind of a table. So.
Yeah. So you have. Oh, wait a minute. Hang on a second. So you have live info widgets over here. Some live graphs.
And to be clear, this is not something my company has done. This is something a community member has done.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's pretty cool.
That makes it even more impressive just because somebody went out of the way to go do something like that.
Yeah. Now I will say like our company tends to give people rewards, but something like this, there's not the most common mode is like, there's not really like an explicit thing. It's like someone wants to hack on something and, we'll give people a tip or as a thank you and that kind of thing. But it's a great, we have that open source, kind of ethos. I'm an open source guy. I use open source software. I contributed to open source projects, before I founded this one. And so just, it's kind of like, we do a lot of things in that sort of like, informal, come get involved, kind of way.
Interesting.
It's really, it's amazing.
It's pretty really cool great stuff. And you're gonna say something, Jeff? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna ask you too. So where are some of the things you see? Just like this is kind of outside the whole LBRY realm, but just you as an entrepreneur and a creator and a programmer, where do you see us going? Let's say where are we going to be 5-10 years down the road, as opposed to, because I think people are waking up to like their freedoms. Where do you see this all headed?
So, I guess I could talk about some of the things that maybe will I think like have some of the biggest impact. I don't know, 5 versus 10 years versus 15 years. I find that actually harder to tell versus like what I think is somewhat inevitable happening. So I think one of the things that's inevitable happening that we haven't really seen the implications of is, or we've mainly seen negative implications of, is DAOs. These decentralized autonomous organizations. And there are positive examples. There are some companies that are now like trying to, or are they even companies? What are they? That are trying to run this way. But I think it's a really interesting idea that I'm not even sure I'm getting all the full implications of, but that you could run an organization like online and effectively pseudo-anonymously with economic incentives. I think the closest analogy is like this sort of blockchainified joint stock corporation and what happens when that happens. I think other things in the financialization and like marketization space, like prediction markets especially, is something that's like going to end up influencing the world or playing a role in ways that we still don't see. I do think, at least in some spaces, these sort of Web 3.0-ish protocols will disrupt or unseat incumbents. I think it's an open question as to what kind of like, I'm pretty open and ambivalent on like what will there be one blockchain or 20 blockchains or 20 million blockchains? Like, I think there's a lot of arguments in terms of like how much we'll see these like chain links and like swallowing things versus like actually independent / federated networks. Obviously, you're going to have like some level of exchanging between them, but it's like, will it ultimately be direct versus like just through separate services? I don't know, but that's definitely something that's like playing out in the space. That's sort of like an unclear or open question. We talking for like bigger socio-political stuff or just blockchain? Right?
Well, yeah, I would like to see that too. I mean, like on all angles, just like your vision of like where you see us headed. What's in store 10 years in a row?
I mean, this is perhaps more like, I don't know if this is how much this is like genuinely happening versus I want it to happen, but I think there's some evidence that it's genuinely happening, which is just like a little bit more of a maybe a cultural assortation, like where like we used like I do see the country is getting like more divided politically, essentially, where what used to divide us was more things like political affiliations divide us even more than, not that class and gender and race and other things aren't still divisors for some people, but it feels like politics is becoming this bigger and bigger one. And I don't know what the end of that is, but I think it could ultimately lead to, bigger political changes. I don't know. It just seems like everything has become so, like everything is like very political and everyone is like very heated and everyone has like a clear, strong opinion on like everything now based off of whether you're like, for at least for a lot of people, not everyone, but like whether you're like a blue or a red. And I think I don't know if I'm misreading it, because I'm not like that old, but it feels weird to me. It feels like something has like been changing and like accelerating in this regard. And I think it's got to ultimately have an impact if it doesn't change.
Now, do you see that the social media outreach through platforms like LBRY or others that are going to actually bring people together? So you can have a conversation and you bring people in that are going to come from all over the world, with different differences of thought, opinion, and it's actually more of a unifier.
I like that. I hope that. I want to believe that. I don't know that and to some extent, like some of that happens. Like I'll tell you, one of the coolest things about this is like some of the people I've met who are from all over the world, brilliant people, from Brazil and other places in South America, brilliant people. The person the mobile developer who's done the majority of our mobile development, really talented engineer, lives in Nigeria, came on and started contributing to the project. Hey, you're really good at what you're doing. Like, let's talk. It's like the nature of like this open, decentralized tech. I mean, look at, I had like two meetings like that just today, where it's like some talented person wanders in. Oh, hey, what are you doing? And that's really cool. It's one of it's super positive. I love that aspect of the tech and the space. And I hope that leads us to forming, if we haven't formed it already, this sort of like global network of people who care about this and do want to build this sort of a new future.
Yeah,
That's awesome.
I was gonna say, I tend to think that you're kind of right about that. About it's divided, but I also look at that it's just this level of wanting to control things everywhere. It's like that didn't used to exist. It's like, hey, we'll put this out there. Like, for example, you watch a news show, it's like, hey, this happened today. You're like, okay, so I'm free to think, is that a good thing or a bad thing? But
I would actually dispute that a little bit. I think, to me, it's like, I'd say this is something that's happened so many times throughout history. It's like the opposite. It's like, how are we having this debate again? Because it's happened 20 times and we've seen how it plays out. Like the ability to suppress truths. It's almost like, I've actually been working on this analogy, so maybe I can workshop it with you guys. I don't know if I've said this one aloud yet. Like, what's the name of the dynamic where like a forest fire, like where it's like if you never let the fire burn, you get like a bunch of like.
You're talking about backcutting, where they backburn stuff, so that, is that what you're talking about?
Well, like if they're like, one of the things that I don't know, maybe this isn't even true. So maybe tell me if this is true.
It doesn't matter. What the hell? We're just on a show talking. Okay.
I think there's this idea that if we police fires too hard, right, you end up getting a lot of accumulation of this material that's like very prone to burning, right? Because you didn't let any smaller fires happen, right? And because of that, if you police the fires too hard, you're like guaranteed to have a large fire, right?
Exactly. That's
and
exactly
there's, I think, you could argue a similar dynamic happens with this whole like the hygiene hypothesis. This idea that like if we keep kids too clean, they end up having super sensitive immune responses, right? I would argue this is the same kind of dynamic. I think the same kind of thing happens with this ability to police truth. Like, it can be good at first. You're like, oh, we're gonna get the really bad stuff, right? But it ends up being something that ends up like weakening the sort of immune response I don't know if that's the right analogy, but like weaken sort of the ability, like, and then some like, and then it gets used for bad, and then some new truth comes in, and because the system like had this built up cruft, way worse stuff ends up happening. Like I would argue, and to crystallize an explanation of this dynamic. I don't know if this makes sense. As I said, I've literally never said this before.
That's good.
Like Protestant Reformation, right? Like a bunch of hidden truths. This stuff gets announced, and it like tears society. I think not nearly the same scale, but a lot of like this is how a lot of scientific. I don't know if that fits. Maybe some scientific revolutions. Yeah, there's some new truth, and it disrupts things. What's another example? I'm trying to think of another example that's closer to like the Martin Luther side of things, where it's like maybe Galileo but these are again very historical.
The Earth is flat. The Earth is not.
The flat earthers. I think you're on to a definite good thought process, especially in a free society. So a lot of things that I'll talk about on the show, if we get into that direction, the erosion of a freedom, and what you're talking about. There's a book written by an author. His name is Paul Eidelberg, and he wrote this book called Demophrenia, and it's the schizophrenic nature of a democracy. So we allow certain erosions to occur in order to protect ourselves from an unforeseen potential threat in the future. And it's a similar type of concept, because what you're talking about is if, you have little conflicts, it's good. Discourse, disagreement, passionate arguments, those are good things. But if you keep trying to suppress those differences of opinion, eventually your suppression becomes oppression. And when people feel oppressed, eventually it's going to flare up into something major, like you're talking about. It becomes a major forest fire, similar to what's been happening in California, similar to what's happening in Michigan right now. The concept of what we've all just gone through, they said, what, we're going to suppress a sickness. So we're going to suppress and push you all into your homes, but we're going to ignore the fact that we're disrupting your right to your freedom, right, of being free under our Constitution. But we're going to force you into your homes. We're not going to allow you to earn a wage. We're going to do all this stuff, and then when you come out and say, I can't take it anymore, that suppression, meaning we're trying to suppress something, and everyone work together. Now you're saying, not only can you not come out of your homes, but now I'm going to extend the amount of time that you have to stay in your homes. And now I'm going to become oppressive. And now I'm going to arrest you if you step out of your home. Now I'm going to force you to wear masks outside of your homes. And if you don't do as I say, you're going to, be penalized monetarily, or you're going to be arrested. And so now the suppression of an illness has become an oppression of civilization. And now people are so passionate about it that you're now bordering on a conflagration that is going to become not just a political uprising, but an armed revolt. And that's exactly, I think, what you're talking about. And that's kind of, that emotion. You can't, even internally, you can't suppress emotion. The more you suppress it, the more it builds up. And at some point it's going to explode and it comes out. Is that kind of what you were? Am I on that same path?
Yeah. I think we should probably leave like my full commentary or opinion on that to the like after part of the show. But like, yes, that dynamic. I think that dynamic.
It's interesting,
right? Well, I think part of it too is I think if you look 40s, 50s, 60s, if you look at how education has changed, if you look at, I almost think we don't even teach critical thinking anymore. It's like the ability to take a look at something and say, hey, and again, that goes back to somebody being in a position to be able to say, like you said before, you referenced it before, Jeremy, it's like, hey, I don't know enough about that. I'm cool with that. I'll leave that to someone, or, that's above my pay grade. And there's lots of people that are willing to go like, hey, I don't know a lot about that. But if you want to talk about an engine, man, I can tell you everything about a combustible engine. But man, I don't really know much about blockchain and how does it work and what is it, and this is the thing with any new frontier, we run into all the time, is that you have when it's just running rampant and there's no it's not regulated at all, well, people get ripped off and there's all kinds of scams. But then you go the other way. It's like, let's have some controls and regulations, and then boom, it goes the other way. So they can have weird effects.
Yeah, well, you have that same kind of immune response. It's an issue where it's like both. If you look at something like the financial bailout, it's like, well, one, like changing the law, like the nature of there's this. I don't know if this one will work for your audience, but there's this like computer science thing where it's like, well, what's true of every bug? They made it through all your tests. Like, what's true of every financial crisis? It's like, well, they made it through all your regulations. Like, if you're just constantly like trying to like regulate the last mistake, like it's very possible that simply learning, in the case of the financial stuff, not necessarily the software, that simply like learning the mistake. Like, we don't need to regulate to not grade, whatever, to not grade a collateralized mortgage security the way that they were getting graded by the grading institutions. Like, all that needed to happen was the mistake, right? Because now we're smarter. Now we know. And there's this idea that like, it needs to all be now like encoded that it can't happen again. And you end up with something that you're overconfident in, right? Because all it really is this set of past mistakes. It's no ability to catch the future new ones. And it ends up being something that's overly rigid. So the system can't like necessarily adapt or evolve in ways that might actually be healthy.
Interesting. And
well, listen, I mean, I would say, Jeff, we're coming up on time, man. That time slipped away from us so easily. Jeremy, what an engaging conversation, man. This is really great. I always love when we do a show, we have someone on like, you just really kind of like makes me really want to think and explore and really like
go right. You didn't rein me in. I started talking about abstract.
Oh no, man! Listen, hey,
awesome.
What? we're true believers. We believe in giving somebody the floor. We invited you on here because we want to know how you think and what your thoughts are and what makes your vision possible.
Yeah, well, I hope I talked about LBRY enough, which is awesome, and you should totally use it. So if you really, it's really easy. I will just, since I'll give this one more time, which is just like, it's so easy. We spend something that I very much encourage. Like, we spend so much time. Well, I'm not saying you guys do this, but some people. Maybe there's one member of your audience out there. I'm talking to this guy who like spends all his time like reading about something. Just try it. Like, it's not complicated. You don't have to do all this stuff. Like, you could be trying it and be done with like in a minute.
Sure, that sounds like RTB.
Yeah,
I think that
sounds
RTB.
a lot like RTB. Roy.
Yeah, I think so too.
That's him. Roy's watching
him.
right now.
Roy, if you're watching, that was
we have a viewer like that. We have some interesting. We love our audience because they're some of the smartest people out there. So it is fun, and even when they make you think different, that's what we love. That's what this is all about. It's about venturing out there and going on a journey, right?
Well, this is a great way to be on. I gotta say, this sounds perfect for LBRY. So.
Well, it's on awesome. There, man. We just gotta hook up the other channel. We're gonna be golden.
That's right. That's exactly it. So, man, so that's it. We really appreciate you coming on. The way this all got set up, and it's really great, having you here with us on the chain. And we're going to do a little bit of a segment, little after show, maybe get to know you a little bit more, and we'll throw that segment up also. I guess that's it. Do you have any parting words before we move over there?
Check out LBRY if you want more from me, which you shouldn't. You can follow me on LBRY at KAUFFJ, and you can also find me on Twitter at Jeremy Kauffman. LBRY is made by the community. If you like the idea of what we're doing, come be a part of it. And I'm very accessible, so if you want to talk to me, whether that's like feedback, ideas, suggestions, getting involved, you can come and talk to me personally. I'm not hard to find.
Yeah, and we'll have your links down below, so you'll get those to us. We'll make sure they're down there so people can go follow and check it out. We'll have our links as well. So. Guys, go to onthechain.io. You can get on there. You can give us your email. We're going to be rolling some cool stuff out. And as you can see, we're building a platform. We're building decentralization. We're living the dream, right? That's what it's all about. That's all I got, Jeff. Thank you so much, Jeremy. And we'll catch you on the next one.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.